Welcome to FOXSOUL's Black Report. This is the space where we bring you Black America's headline news, views, and opinions. I'm Romeo.
Hey there, I'm Brooke.
I'm Demi.
Peace and love, I'm Nielle.
All right, coming up on today's report, we are bringing you election results from the Black perspective. How does this affect you, the wins, the losses?
Plus, we'll let you know what elections made Black history. And did you know the Obama portraits are on a national tour? Yeah, we'll tell you when and where.
We have that, soulmates, and so much more because it's our voice and our truth. So let's get to it.
Good evening, soulmates. Thank you for joining us. Voters in Minneapolis have rejected what would have been an unprecedented move to dismantle the police department after calls for reform, of course, following the killing of George Floyd. So the measure asked voters whether they favored amending the city's charter, replacing the Minneapolis Police Department with the Department of Public Safety. The initiative would have removed language from the charter related to the agency, including minimum funding requirements, and would have divided control of public safety between the mayor and city council. The question failed, 57% to 44%. The Minnesota Secretary of State's office released these numbers so far, with 133 of 136 precincts reporting. It did need 51% of voter approval to pass. Okay, so a couple things here. One, you had a lot of people for this saying, look what happened. Look at how many people have died. Things need to drastically change. You had a lot of people against this saying, we're not even clear what would come, right? People were saying it's not clear what you're replacing it with. You're essentially saying, we'll work it out. We'll replace it with these sort of controls, and then we'll tell you, we'll work out exactly what that will look like. And I think that seemed to turn off a lot of voters too. But what was also interesting about this is that you had a lot of people outside of the entire state watching this, because this was to be a sign of what could come, or what would come, or maybe what voters, what people really feel about changing, policing in this day and age. I will say the measure failed, but I'm curious what you think about the margins that it failed. The measure failed, but it didn't fail by 97% to 3%. It was pretty, 47. I'm gonna.
It was
mess
57
it up,
to 44.
Exactly, and so was that a surprising?
That part wasn't a surprise to me, but I wasn't surprised at the turnout. And the reason why, looking online, seeing a lot of things on social media, like a lot of Black business owners as well were saying they're not sure what the plan's going to be, what the next move, if it is approved. So that's why I think it did not go through. And I even think us on the outside looking in was like, okay, if this does get approved, okay, then what's the next move? Maybe they'll have it right by the time it gets to our city or state. But I think that was the turnoff point.
Yeah. Romeo, like you said, what's the next move? But there still are so many more moves that can be made. This isn't the end for, Minneapolis. So what I thought was very interesting is getting this on the ballot was impressive. Getting over 20,000 signatures was impressive. And so this group, in their post press conference, they were rejoicing and saying like, hey, this is not going to be the end, and we're going to still going. We're going to keep still going. I was really happy to hear that. And he also said, that this is not the end, more importantly, because he still doesn't feel safe getting pulled over. And many of us don't feel safe getting pulled over. So there's still going to be a lot of work to do. I'm just really happy for what they've accomplished so far, and of course, what's to come.
44% of voters voting for this measure is historic, and they should really applaud themselves. And they actually got over 200,000 signatures to put this on the ballot. So this just shows you that if you keep pressing, change will happen. And like we say, politics are local. So I think these people should be applauded for getting it on the ballot and pushing it far as it is. They should not be ashamed of 44%. That's huge for a local election.
I agree.
All right, and moving to Detroit. Detroit reparations measure wins. Proposal R was overwhelmingly approved by 81% of the vote. Now, it was led by a city council member, Mary Sherfield. The measure requires the Detroit City Council to establish a reparations task force to make recommendations for housing and economic development programs that address historically discriminated Black Detroit's citizens. And Detroit is about 79% African American. So Keith Williams, Michigan Democratic Party Black Caucus Chair, said the victory on the issue was the result of coalition building that included City Council, the caucus, and various community groups. Another step forward for reparations. We know that Sheila Lee Jackson is handling it on Capitol Hill in Congress. We know here in the state of California that they have a task force that are happening, examining what reparations will look like for Black Americans. And now Detroit is moving the needle. I think that this conversation needs to continue to happen, and the voters voted, and there you have it. We're going to continue this conversation and grow the conversation of reparations in this country.
Well, you know, on top of almost 80% African American, also 1/3 of people in Detroit also live in poverty as well. So this is definitely a step in the right direction. You guys know I'm very open how I feel about every reparations movement that I hear. So of course, I know we'll be doing some more deep diving into this, but even this happening and getting approved, it inspires going back to Illinois and, you know, what we've seen in other states, it inspires other places, smaller communities, marginalized communities to explore reparations as well. There's a small town in Maryland called College Park, Maryland. Now they're seeking reparations for their town. So, you know, every time you hear about reparations, whether good or bad, whatever, it inspires someone else to look into it for their town as well.
I agree, and the fact again was the fact that we're talking about reparations is a major thing, and it said the two things is current past wrongs and current inequities. So they're trying to fix what was wrong in the past, so hopefully we can get that right. Our Democrat Shontel Brown has won the race to succeed Housing and Urban Development Secretary Marcia Fudge in Ohio's 11th Congressional District. The Associated Press called the race for her.
I was relieved. As I've said before, humbly and respectfully, I've never gotten into a race without the expectation of winning. And so I've had success in my last 6 races, and this being my 7th, I was just relieved that we got to another victory.
Brown, a member of the Cuyahoga County Council, cruised to victory over Republican Laverne Jones Gore in a special election that was called after Fudge stepped down early this year to join President Biden's administration. So she wants to hit the ground running. She says she's not going to be the typical about politics and personal issues. It's all about public service. You know, we're talking about a place that's trying to recover from the pandemic, as we all are across the country. She also, on the campaign, she wants to be working on to stem gun violence by supporting gun safety measures, including banning firearm sales to those convicted of domestic violence and things of that nature. So, again, history made. We love what's going on here.
You know, there's, you know, standing firm on what you believe in, and then there's also politics. And when you're in politics, you have to play the politics, the politics. You have to play the game. And so, you know, I feel like Nina Turner, although she raised more money, there were some things that hurt her campaign along the line. One being the Killer Mike situation. That was definitely detrimental, I feel like. You know, you had Shontel Brown, who endorsed President Biden. President Biden called her after she won. So, I mean, also, you know, I hated that 2 Black women had to go head to head, but at the end of the day, you have to play the game in a situation like this. And I know that it's far more than just playing a game, because both women have, you know, certain things that they stand firm on for their campaigns. But I just feel like with Shontel Brown, she knew what she needed to do to, you know, to get what she got, actually.
Right, and I believe she was chosen to run for that, to defeat Nina Turner, because let's remember, the Congressional Black Caucus got involved in the election. They traditionally don't when it's a Black person against a Black person, but to the point of Killer Mike making that comment about one of the members of Congress, it kind of pushed her to the forefront, and she received Biden's endorsement. But I think Nina Turner is not done, and I believe that we will see more of her in the future.
Winston Sears, who is a Republican, did win, the state's lieutenant gubernatorial race, making history as the first woman and Black woman to hold the position. NBC and CNN both called the race for Sears very early on Wednesday morning. In addition to being second in command in Richmond, Sears will also play the crucial role as the president of the state Senate, where she could cast a number of tie-breaking votes over the next 2 years. Currently, Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax has cast 52 tie-breaking votes in his role as president of the legislative body. Democrats control the state Senate, which doesn't see elections until 2023, 21, as well as 19. So this was very interesting, because I mentioned this I believe a couple of days ago when we started talking about Winston Sears against Ayala. So there's this GOP communication strategist that I don't follow, but I found him on Twitter. It doesn't matter how I found him, but we found each other. So he put, prediction: media will not obsess over the fact that Winston Sears just became the first black woman elected to Lieutenant Governor of Virginia because she is a Republican. And so, you know, I agreed with that, honestly, because like there's not like crazy news about it. You know, she was endorsed by the NRA. She has this photo of her with like this long rifle shotgun on Instagram and all around the world. And it's just like, yeah, I don't think that people are going to obsess about, we're talking about it here, but I feel like the world is not going to obsess about it because she is a Republican, and I'm okay with that. In her speech, really quick, I didn't get a chance to add it into the show today. She did a speech where she was just like, you know what, I'm living proof that I'm a black woman. We elected a black president once. We elected a black vice president twice. You see what we've done, America? You know, she's like, the Democrats want to make it seem like we're split, and it's like, come on now. Like, I just didn't like the tone as if like, you know, I'm a black woman and I'm a black person. They're hiring us black people to, you know, to be in office. And it's just kind of like, it was so cringe. It was so cringe and unnecessary. And just, I just didn't like the way of it. And I think that definitely people are not going to want to talk about it because she is a Republican, and I'm okay with that.
I mean, no, say it, go ahead.
You know, she is right. The fact that she's a black woman is proof that a black woman can be elected lieutenant governor in Virginia.
Right.
That there is proof of that. She is proof of that. This is history making. But it is also okay if people feel like her policies and her platform don't help their community. Mm-hmm. That's also okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we see that happen a lot. No, so we see people feel like that a lot.
Right. I'm going to talk about Justin Fairfax because he was a rising star in the Democratic Party, and he was supposed to run for governor at one point, but he kind of fell from grace at the beginning of the Me Too movement when he was elected, and it was at the same time with the previous governor had the blackface, so that came into play. Then Justin Fairfax had the Me Too allegations. And from that moment, he just really became silent, and all of the political power that was behind him kind of fell off. So I just wanted to bring that up to note that, you know, Justin Fairfax was supposed to be a huge star within the black politics in this country, and now he's no longer there.
Should we stay in this state, too? Because obviously lieutenant governor means there's a governor. This was a massive election that the entire nation also, just like in Minneapolis, was watching to see what comes next, right? So I want to get into this. Democrat Terry McAuliffe has formally conceded to Glenn Youngkin. And he did this in a statement this morning. The AP projected Youngkin pretty quickly this morning early as the winner of Virginia's governor race. Happened after midnight, again, pretty quickly early this morning. Election results that we have so far, Youngkin got 1.67 million votes to McAuliffe's 1.61. So much to talk about here. An interesting conversation happening. So Youngkin won heavy on critical race theory. And I will always say, because words matter, it is important to note that critical race theory is not being taught in the state of Virginia. Right. And you can come back and say, well, they don't actually mean critical race theory. What they mean is this, this, and this. That's an interesting point that is made a lot. And I want to take that to defund the police. Because what do we always hear about defund the police from Democrats? We hear that the messaging is wrong. Mm-hmm. That people don't understand what it means, that you need to change the wording. If you change the wording, if you spell it out differently, people will get on board with it. It's harmful to Democrats, to their base, because people don't understand what it means. It sounds scary. No one knows what this means. No one knows what critical race theory means. It is a legal term. It is critical race theory. The defined critical race theory is something that would be taught in law school. All of the administrators, the superintendents, the school board have come out and said critical race theory is not being taught in the state of Virginia. But it doesn't matter. Republicans ran on that and zoomed through on that. Their base did not care. We have seen this week video after video of people saying, well, I can't explain what it means. I just know I don't like it. I don't know. And that has been fascinating to me, kind of taking a look back, that Democrats have kind of beat on other Democrats. You know, do you all remember that big argument after last November, just a year ago, that big argument, and we maybe weren't supposed to hear the infighting of the Democratic Party, and a lot of it had to do with defund the police. And we talk about it often. You will hear people say the messaging is wrong. I am fascinated by the messaging being just messaging.
Well,
it worked.
Oh, go ahead, Romeo.
Well, let's talk about his messaging now, because to me this one stood out very much, and the reason why is because they're wondering he didn't really lean on the Trump situation in my eyes and most people's eyes.
He
came out very clean and said, this is who I am, this is what I'm about, although he's going to bring that up, but how are they going to respond that when they don't even teach critical race theory? It's like, okay, so you're bringing up something we really can't even clap back on, all right? And I use that term, and the reason why is because at the end of the day, is this a setup for what's going to happen for the midterms? I don't want people to get ahead of themselves. I don't necessarily think that's the case, in my opinion, but I do say this. There are a lot of people that are saying the Democrats are not coming through what they say they're going to do. And if you do not continue to stand true to what you say you're going to bring to the table, this could happen across the country.
You know what? Not only is that an important question, is this a setup of what's to come in the midterms, but another question to go along with that are our lawmakers in Congress going to react to the possibility that this is a look ahead at what's to come? And you know, just today, Democrats put paid medical leave back in the bill. They put it back in this morning. Of course, Manchin is still saying, look, you know how I feel about this.
Right.
I'm not happy about this. Right. But they put it back in. And the question is that a reaction? Are we going to continue to see lots of reactions based on what we saw in Virginia?
Well, let's go
to talk is a long time in politics.
I agree. So let's go back to talking points, because that was the beginning of the conversation. And to your point, Brooke, Republicans do well, I've said it before, with how they create their narratives and talking points. And when we talk about defund the police, I think that it was a great talking point. I just don't think that the Democratic Party embraced it. Because if you were to break down what defund the police means, it's just reallocation of funds so that all of the money doesn't go to weapons and all of the things that victimize communities of colors, but putting more resources into rehabilitation programs, parole programs, and mental health programs that a lot of people get arrested in this country for and are serving a long time in prison. Let's just reallocate those funds. So I think that the Democratic Party maybe should have embraced that concept. And then when you look at critical race theory, that term, as you broke it down so eloquently, was basically a reference to the 1619 Project and many schools, public schools in this country, adopting that New York Times beautiful, well-written expose story about the history of black people in this country. That was the Republicans' response to that. And they did a great job of pushing it and having all of these school board members and all of these Republicans embrace it. Another thing I want to talk to really quickly about the Virginia race. I think a lot of the race had to do with rural white America having a problem with all of these monuments coming down. So you have critical race theory where, they want to change what the history of this country and the foundation what we established for years and years in these history books. And then you see all of your monuments, the Lee statues coming down, all of these Confederate statues coming down. I think they had a huge problem with this in the state of Virginia, and this is why Democrats didn't pull it off.
You know, we also cannot forget here for a second that a lot of people online were blaming the loss on Senators Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, because you think about it, when somebody goes to vote, if they're looking at the Democratic Party, like you guys have all said, pretty much not having it together, what would make you want to, join that party, so to speak, and it kind of makes you feel like, well, maybe I kind of want to do something else. They seem like they have it together. So you also have to think about that too. With us not having it together, it doesn't make us look very strong right now.
All right, so let's go to New Jersey. The verdict is still out in New Jersey's governor's race. So as of this morning, Governor Phil Murphy was leading Republican challenger Jack Ciattarelli by just 1,400 votes after a pause in voting late last night. Now that saw Ciattarelli up front for about 1,100 votes, but 158 of the state's 6,300 voting districts had still not been counting. This is another race that many are watching, and we're watching it too. And as soon as the results come out, we'll let you know.